Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the MySQL webinar series. My name is Henrique Lemes. I'm a MySQL solution engineer. Here we have my colleague Priscila Galvão. She's a MySQL solution engineer. And she will conduct the second half of this webinar. We have also Kenny Grip. He is the MySQL product manager, and he will be supporting us on the Q&A session. Okay, so today's topic, we talk about migration. I'm very excited to talk about that and being more specific. Let's talk about migration from Amazon RDS to MySQL database service. Please feel free to ask all your questions during this presentation on the chat box. I hope you enjoy, and let's get started. Before we continue, please read the safe harbor statement. Okay, so here's our agenda today. We'll start discussing first the why. Why moving from Amazon RDS to Oracle MDS. And here, not only technical aspects, but also understand the business and strategic reasons. Then we will show the step by step, the simple process to move from your data set from Amazon RDS to Oracle MDS. And finally, we have the Q&A session. So I could start my presentation repeating everything about cloud benefits, everything that we are aware about flexibility, automatic software updates, increased collaboration, software security updates, everything about that. But I can tell you, I want to do more than that. I'm here today to bring something very unique, something that only Oracle MySQL database service has. First, let me remind you all, MySQL is the most popular open source database in the world. These companies started with a simple MySQL application, and today they are disrupting into multiple industries. Companies empowered by MySQL are faster to innovation, modern, with modern architectures. MySQL combines the benefits of a widely adopted open source database solution with a strong ecosystem medium of users and backing at Oracle. Okay, so if you are running MySQL on Amazon RDS, there are many questions. Probably you can ask how to get the latest features, security fixes, how to provide secure regulatory compliance, how to provide compatibility with on-premises, how to integrate with Oracle technology, how to get MySQL expert support. If you run MySQL database service on Oracle Cloud, the answer is very simple. So 100% developed and managed by MySQL team. So the same team that developed the server, that developed the core, developed and built the entire database, MySQL database service. So all this team working together, we have a really nice collaboration, testing everything together. Everything is based 100% based on Enterprise Edition. So it means that on Oracle MySQL database service, we are not running Community Edition. 100% Enterprise Edition, 100% compatible with on-premise. The same release that we have available on MDS is the same release that is available on premise, is 100% compatible with that. 100% compatible with Oracle technology. So the OCI platform has more resource, more application, everything is tested together. Everything is tested with MySQL database service. We have more access, more resources from there that you can use together. And of course, something very specific, very unique that you cannot find any other cloud provider, which is 100% supported by MySQL team. So the MySQL team, they can help you with any requests related to MySQL, about schemas review. If you have technical specific question, they are 24/7 ready to help you with all these requests. So only MySQL database service provide that. Um, and here, as I mentioned before, MySQL database service is a unique managed service. When I say that it's easy, it means that fully managed database service, or it means like patching, upgrades, backup. The platform does everything for you. Instant provisioning. Few clicks, you can provision your instance. You can deploy your instance you have up and running. Latest features, always running on the latest MySQL version. This is something very important to mention. When you release, we are often releasing improvements, and you'll be immediately available on MySQL database service, something that only MySQL database service provide. Other cloud providers, they are not running the latest version that includes bug fixes, improvements, and security as well fixes. The security includes, as I said, patches and bug fix always updated. So this is something very important to highlight here. And enterprise ready, only available on MySQL database service. Compatibility with on-premise as well, and based on Oracle Gen 2 cloud infrastructure, which is really powerful platform focused on security as well. Okay, so MySQL database service, I can highlight here some key use case for that. First, I'd like to mention database for developers, which is they can really easily deploy this instance and focus on coding. Of course, this extends to test, quality assurance environment, standalone production environments as well. The other use case, we can bring your existing workloads to MDS. You can work with hybrid environment, very flexible architecture that help you with that. We don't have lock-in, so the same version again that we release, that we have available, that you run on-premise is this version that we have on MDS based on Enterprise Edition. So it's not a fork, it's MySQL 100%. And something very important here that I like to mention is about for SaaS applications and for ICVs as well. So some of the most innovative ICVs customers, they deliver the application as SaaS model. They benefit from the faster time to market, low upfront costs, and security and more flexibility as well. So a great use case that you can consider. Okay, so to resume, only MySQL database service provides built-in MySQL Enterprise Edition. We mentioned that we have more webinars that we present last days that explain with more details about that. Support, which is part of the MySQL database service, only available on MDS 24/7. 100% compatibility, hybrid environments, no cloud lock-in, access to the latest version, and something here that's very important to mention. So we support document store. MySQL allows you to choose if you want to create, if you want to work with document store, JSON, and we can keep the same instance, work with the relational database, something that only MySQL database service provide. If you are running on RDS and you try to create a document store JSON, you are restricted to that. So only MySQL database service provide this on the managed service. And again, they highlight the Gen 2 cloud infrastructure, which is dedicated to run enterprise workloads. Okay, this is really interesting right now. So everything that I mentioned before, which is related enterprise, based on enterprise edition, support included. We can support NoSQL. So everything that I mentioned before, maybe you think that you are paying for more for that, right? The answer is not. So you pay less. So MySQL database service delivers up to 70% total cost ownership saving over Amazon RDS. This is a really aggressive pricing that if you compare with Amazon RDS, you see that we are very aggressive in terms of pricing. So here I have more information about other cloud providers. I mentioned about the Amazon RDS, but here I show Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud SQL. So you see MySQL price is really aggressive. We can really explore that. Something is we have the cost estimator. If you go to oracle.com/cloud/cost estimator, you can easily add your information if you know the hardware, the shape, configuration that you have. You can add number of instance, the number of CPUs that you have, and storage, block storage. So you can easily calculate how much you could be saving running on RDS. If you have any question, if you need any help to relate that, help you to create like this simulate this cost estimator, we can help, of course, with that. Okay, so now changing topics, right? So I explained the benefits, what you have available on MySQL database service, all the benefits and the cost, which is really interesting and very aggressive. So now let's understand how we migrate that, how we bring the data that you are running on Amazon RDS to Oracle MDS. Before we proceed to the next steps, there are some consideration which is very important to highlight here. So first of all, always use MySQL Shell dump load utility. So this is the official tool that allows you to migrate very fast and safe to MySQL database service. We know there are other ways that you can dump your database, your instance using Workbench or in all other tools, but this is not the safe way. This is not the best way to do it, and then I will explain why. We can make sure that using MySQL Shell dump load utility, we can guarantee that your data will be safe and consistent to run on MDS. The next step, we can also check the MySQL 8.0 compatibility. So we have available on MySQL database service the latest version, which is right now 8.021. So we can check. I will explain how it works, and check the database size. So there are many strategies that we can discuss here. If you are running a huge database, we can run import, dump, and load in parallel. We will explain how it works, but something that we can think about that. And of course, always follow your network secure connection. Just make sure you are moving your data following the networking best practice in a safe environment. Okay, so before I start tell you more information about MySQL Shell dump load, let's highlight MySQL Shell overall. MySQL Shell is, if you are not familiar with that, we can provide scripting capabilities for JavaScript, Python. We can, of course, run your SQL queries. We have SQL CLI. We have APIs as well. You can deploy DB cluster architecture. You have access to your JSON document store using XDev API. And it includes the upgrade checker here. So the MySQL Shell has the upgrade checker. If you are running 5.7 or higher, you can see and run this upgrade checker and see if your instance is ready to go to 8.0. So it's a really great client tool that comes with more resources to support and manage your environment. So here is the MySQL Shell upgrade checker utility. So basically here, if you see, I just I started the shell, and then I just type /c, which stands for connect. I have a user called admin, and then I just share my endpoint on RDS in the port, standard MySQL port. So after that, I just run the util check for server upgrade. So if you run that, you see that you check the compatibility with MySQL 8.021, which is the latest version. And here you have the results if you have error, if you have warnings or any message related that you could fix before the migration. So this is the first step you need to do. Keep in mind that to start this migration process, start your MySQL shell, connect to the instance, and run run util.check for server upgrade. It's very easy, and then the tool will give you this information. Just going back to what I said before, again, there are other ways to export the data, but Shell is the official tool for that. You cannot do the upgrade checker using any other resource, any other tool. Just focus on MySQL Shell for these activities. Okay, so after that I explained how it works, the Shell upgrade checker. The next step is to work with shell dump load, right? So here, MySQL shell dump load is a new feature part of the shell that include really exciting utilities that you can create logical dumps and logical restore. And the focus here is make this simple, right? So the idea here is really easy to use. I will explain how it works. Performance. So we are aware performance is really important, especially if you are running, if you want to migrate big data sets. So it's very important item to mention. And integration. So this is the trick as well. So the integration to Oracle MDS, integration to object storage. So that's the way that you need to follow to move your data. So it means that you can really, using MySQL Shell, we can dump your RDS instance and send straight to the OCI object storage. And Priscilla will show for us more information step by step how to do this, but this is a very simple process, and let's understand better what happened with MySQL Shell dump load. Okay, so here there are three new utilities part of the MySQL Shell. So I started mentioning util.dump instance. If you run that, you can dump an entire database instance that includes your users, the claims, everything. So you can restore this information with everything, right? Your data set, your database structure, include the users and grants, everything. You have util dump schemas. You can select the schemas only. And you have load dump. So here, how we load the data to MySQL database service. Of course, we can customize this information. We can add more parameters, part of these utilities, and then you can customize the way you want to dump or load the information. Let's understand more information. So MySQL Shell dump load, we have multi-thread dump, right? First of all, it's very unique. We can split large tables in smaller chunks. That's why we can achieve up to 3 gigabytes per second for dump or 200 megabytes per second for load. So we split the large table, small chunks, small files, multiple files, and we define the number of threads. So we can run this in parallel. We can chunk in parallel. So depending on your hardware configuration, we can increase the number of threads, the number of connection, and then we make this process in parallel, and you make the process faster. of course. Um, so we can see the progress of, we can see the status, how your dump is performing or loading. We can see this information. We can use it to use compression as well. By default, MySQL Shell dump load use compression based on ZSTD, which is the default. If you're running exporting your information to object storage, so you don't need to change that. So we are optimized to work better with ZSTD as we have default. But there are other use case, gzip, you can also customize. So here you can, the MySQL Shell dump load, as I mentioned before, we dump and load straight to OCI object storage. This is the right way that you need to follow as well to update, to upload the information. So we dump straight to the object store, Oracle object storage. You make the process very easy, very simple, and then we restore. So basically, this is how MySQL Shell dump load works. Let's understand more information related to parameters, how you can customize your script to run this load or dump process. I'll start mentioning about dry run, right? So if you want to create your script and then you want to perform you run this script without writing anything, so you can try and test if it's working or if it's missing something. So you have these dry runs, and you set true, and then you can see how it works. You can add the parameter data only. So here you dump only the data from the database. Something very specific only MySQL Shell dump load has, and you always need to enable when you create your script to dump information from RDS to MDS is the OCI MDS. So just add this OCI MDS equal true, and then the MySQL Shell will validate the compatibility with the OCI version that we have. So here is very important. All the dump that you are running that you load on the MDS, you need to enable the OCI MDS. We take care about configuration or grains that you might find, maybe you can face some issues. So the OCI MDS just validates this compatibility. We have show progress as well. So if you enable, disable, you can do that, and compression, as I mentioned before. So we will demonstrate that later, the script with all these parameters, and then we'll highlight more information. But there are some more parameters that I'd like to mention here. You can add exclude schemas if you want to skip loading one specific schema from the dump. You can easily just use that. It same applies for table. You can load users as well and keep the roles, the grains, everything. Reset progress if you are loading previous attempt, try many times, so we can reset the progress and create a new one. And very important, the threads. So the thread is very important that will enable create import parallel process based on the number that you define. So here it's really interesting that make the process faster. Okay, so I have here an example about another parameter which is very important. So I'd like to highlight the wait dump timeout. So here in this script, I'm running util, I'm running here util dump, load dump, and then I have here OCI config file where I need to create to enable you point to the OCI object storage. Priscilla will cover here with more details, but I'd like to just talk about the threads. You can customize, you can add more than one thread. And here I have wait dump timeout. I have here 1,800 seconds, which is 30 minutes. And the idea of basically, this feature allows you to load a dump on the fly. So loading tables, data chunks as dumper produces them. So here, let's think about this use case. So you have a huge database on the RDS, Amazon RDS, and it takes 2 hours to dump this information, okay? So we are using MySQL Shell. We connect it to this instance, and then we configure the OCI config file. We are sending all the information straight to OCI object storage. So I started the dumping process right now. The MySQL Shell is creating multiple chunks of this data. And then I want to start at the same time. I go to the Oracle Cloud infrastructure, and I start the load process. And then I set this parameter to, for example, 130 minutes here. So it means that I can start the load process. I can start importing the information, reading the chunks that arise on the OCI object storage. And I have a timeout defined here for 30 minutes. So if this 30 minutes expire, so we finish this uploading process. So this is really interesting feature that we can save a lot of time. So this is very important to mention. There are great use case. We can save time working with this wait dump timeout. So we save time a lot using this. So this is a great feature. Right now, I will hand over to Priscilla, and she will continue presenting us how to connect in the entire process, connecting to the Amazon RDS, creating the object storage, and we dumping the information, loading the information. And if you have any question, please remember you can send your question on the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, Lemis. So now that Lemis covered all about our MySQL database service and as well as our new MySQL Shell dump and load, I'll be covering more like the process, the step-by-step is how to migrate the data from Amazon RDS to our MySQL MDS. I think it went out for me. Sorry. Can you give me control again, please? Okay, I think I got it now. Thanks. Not allowing me to pass. Okay. Sorry about the problems here. So to start, let's talk about our architecture on both Amazon RDS and Oracle Cloud, okay? So on Amazon RDS, we have one machine, AC2 compute connected to our MySQL RDS there. And the same applies to our Oracle Cloud, where we have a compute instance connected to our MDS instance that contains our database, correct? So the steps that we will be doing today is we are gonna load our dump, no, we are gonna dump our database, sorry, from our RDS and then send to our block storage on OCI. Once we have all the information on object storage, we are gonna, at the same time, load the information into MDS. So that's basically the process for today. If you don't have an object storage already created on OCI, that's the first step that we should do, correct? So we are gonna visit the OCI dashboard, go on the menu, and under core infrastructure, we can find the object storage link. And then you can click on object storage. It's gonna open a page like this one for us. So the first step that we have to do is choose the compartment where we want to create our bucket. And then we are gonna start creating the bucket by clicking on create bucket. So it's gonna open a page like this, written create bucket at the top. And then we have to enter the bucket name. We have to choose the storage tier. On our case, we are using the standard tier here. You can also choose, for example, the encryption type that you want to have on your object storage. And then you can continue creating the bucket. So once the bucket is created, it's gonna be added to our links of buckets. So we are gonna click on the bucket name and it's gonna open a page like this. So when we have this information, we really have to look for the bucket name that we created. On our case, it's gonna be MDS bucket, and as well the namespace. This namespace will be used on our scripts. So we have really to record this information or copy somewhere that we can use on further steps. Okay, so in order, I think Lemis already mentioned this, but in order for us to connect to our object storage, to either dump the database or load the database into our MDS, we have to create what we call the OCI config file. The OCI config file, it can store multiple users' authentications information. On our example, we'll have on one, the default. So we'll have the user OCID information, a fingerprint that we are gonna generate during our process here, a key file as well that we are gonna create, and the tenancy OCID. The region is the region where you are running your MDS on OCI. So I'm gonna help you now to find the information that needs to be collected in order to add to OCI config file, okay? So the first information that we are looking for is the tenancy OCID. So in order for you to collect this information, you have to visit our profile on the dashboard and go into the tenancy. My tenancy ID is called MySQL SE, but you see here your tenancy information or name, correct? So once you click on that, it's gonna open a page with all the tenancy information. Again, we'll see the tenant's name, and what we are looking for here is the OCID. You can show the OCID and copy and paste, or you can click on the copy button and paste the information inside the OCI config file. In order to have the information about the user, we as well have to create a public and private key that needs to be applied. So to generate those keys, we have the command available here to create both the private and public key. If you have any problems to generate those keys, we have here on our presentation the link for our documentation where you can find more step by step as how to generate these keys. Okay, so now we have our key created. We have our tenancy OCID information. Now we are gonna use look for the user information, okay? So the user OCID is pretty similar than the tenancy OCID. We have to go again on the profile, but instead of going on tenancy here, we are gonna look for our user on OCI. So here you can see priscilla.calvan@oracle.com is my user. And then once you click there, it's gonna open a page again with the user details. You can check my name is still showing there, and you can copy the OC ID as well. That's gonna be used on the OCI config file. The other point that we have to cover on this page is we have to go under resources and click on API keys. And then we are gonna add the public key that we generate on the steps before. Once the key is added, you're gonna have a fingerprint here on the bottom on the list. You can have multiple fingerprints for a certain user depending on the key that they are using to connect to the object storage. And then you're gonna collect this fingerprint and add to your OCI config file as well. So now we have all the information we need to our config file, and we'll move forward with the next steps. So the first step that we are gonna do, we are gonna connect to our EC2 compute on AWS. So we are doing SSH. We have a key that we used and created on Amazon. And then we have the user and the endpoint for that machine. So you connect to the EC2, and once you are there, you are gonna make sure to copy, to have a copy of our OCI config file stored on that machine. On our case, we stored inside etc, and our file looks like this. So your file will be pretty similar, but with your unique information for the user, the fingerprints, and also for the tenants and region. So the next step is to connect to RDS in order to do our dump. Okay, again, let me explain about our new MySQL Shell and MySQL Shell dump and load. And we'll be using the MySQL Shell in order to connect to RDS. We installed the MySQL Shell on both our EC2 machines and also on our OCI compute in order to have this process done. So here we are using MySQL Shell, and we are using the /c in order to connect. We have our user admin and as well the endpoint for the RDS machine. Once you enter your password and it's approved, it's going to connect. So now you are already inside the RDS machine, and you can directly dump your database and send to our object storage on Oracle OCI. So we will be using exactly the same util that Henrique Lendes covered for us before. So it's called the dump instance util. The first information that we enter on our script was a prefix. This prefix world is the name that we gave to our database, and also we are going to be seeing at the beginning of the file names on the object storage. The second information here, or parameter, is the OCI config file location, where we save it inside the EC2 machine. The OS bucket name, remember when I create my bucket, I use the MDS bucket name. And also when I open the bucket detail page, I mentioned that we have to have the OS namespace saved. So that's where we should apply that information. On our example, we use an open on one thread, but you could open more in order to dump your database. As well, we use the dry run as false because we already had it as true while we were creating the command and testing it out to make sure that it would run correctly. Let me mention before, but I will highlight again the OCI MDS because we really have to set this as true in order to check the compatibility with my MySQL database service. And as you can see here, as soon as we start running this command, we are going to see the checking that the system is checking the compatibility. On our example, we had multiple data sets inside our RDS. So we decided to exclude one of these schemas because we didn't want to dump that information. So when the dump is finished, you're gonna see something like this, where you have the schemas, the number of schemas that was dumped, and the number of tables as well. So it's pretty straightforward, as you can see. Now we have the dump already on our object storage. If you want to check and see if the dump was done and correctly, you can go back on our dashboard on OCI, visit the menu on object storage, and you're gonna see here under the objects inside my bucket, all the objects that were created. Remember, I mentioned that my prefix was world, so any files will have the world prefix that apply to them. So the next step is for us to connect to our OCI machines in order to load the dump. So we are doing SSH to our compute machine on OCI. We have the key for it, the user OPC, and the IP address that we used. Again, we are using the MySQL Shell, and we are connecting to our MDS machine. We're doing the /c to connect. The root is our user on MDS and the IP address. We provide the password and we were logged in. So now it's time to load the dump. That's pretty much what we are looking for. So we have to use the util load dump that Lemis mentioned before. Again, we have to add the prefix, the world prefix, in order to import the data from the object storage. We have as well the config file information because I have it stored on my OCI compute instance, the bucket name, the OS namespace, and how many threads we want to open in order to load the dump. On our case, we chose only one. But as you can see here, our load was divided in 3 chunks, and we had 3 tables and 1 schema loaded inside MDS. So pretty much this is the process to import data from RDS into our MDS. It's quite simple, just some steps. So continue talking about our MySQL Shell dump and load. Our engineers did some benchmarks comparing this new functionality with other tools available on the market. In order to do these benchmarks, we were using 3 data sets, OnTime with 64 giga, Stack Overflow with 216, and Wikipedia with 130. They all combined were around 410 giga. We'll see on the next slides how better the performance was. So here we were doing the dump for those data sets that we saw in MySQL. On most of the case, MySQL Shell dump and load had higher performance while dumping those information. And the same happened on the load process. When we see here the comparison between the MySQL Shell dump and load, they had a better performance compared to all other tools. If you want to see more details about these studies that our engineers did, we have on our engineer blog, mysqlserver.com, all information about these benchmarks. Please feel free to visit the page.